Fayed, the serial predator. I've explained in previous videos about how Mohammed Fayed, the deceased owner of Harrods and other enterprises, was a serial predator and a narcissist. It's useful to understand this in terms of recognizing why he behaved the way that he did, similar to the way that Jeffrey Epstein behaved, Harvey Weinstein behaved, in the way that P. Diddy is accused of behaving, and also to understand the impact that it has upon victims, why they behave in the way that they do. It sheds light on the repeated need of this individual to assert control over people and draw fuel from them by sexually abusing them, sexually assaulting them, treating them like the objects that they are subconsciously seen as. Hannah Price and Olivia Davies report for the BBC that 65 more women tell the BBC of sexual abuse by Fayed. A further 65 women have contacted the BBC saying they were abused by Mohammed Fayed, with allegations stretching far beyond Harrods and as far back as 1977. So this behaviour has gone back nearly 50 years, demonstrating a sustained pattern of behaviour by this individual. Their accounts include new details of sexual harassment, lack of emotional empathy, sense of entitlement, lack of boundary recognition, sexual assault and rape, lack of emotional empathy, lack of boundary recognition, sent to the BBC in the weeks since the documentary, Fayed, Predator at Harrods, and a podcast were broadcast. They suggest Fayed, who died last year, used a broader range of abuse tactics and also targeted women employed outside his businesses. Hitherto, the focus had been on those that were in easy reach for him as employees. Thereby, there was a power imbalance between him as the employer and owner and them as an employee. Several of the women interviewed by the BBC allege they were recruited by Fayed under false pretenses: lack of emotional empathy, telling a lie, manipulation, into roles on the billionaire's domestic staff, and were then sexually exploited by him, including at his mansion in Oxford. In the earliest accusation of abuse which the BBC has heard, a woman says she was assaulted by Fayed in Dubai in 1977, 8 years before his purchase of Harrods helped him become a household name in the United Kingdom. She describes Fayed personally stalking and threatening her, assertion of control. Women who worked at Harrods say he later carried out similar intimidation, form of manipulation, tactics through a team of security staff, use of the coterie. Of the 65 women who contacted the BBC to share their accounts of abuse, 37 of these say they had worked at Harrods. The BBC has also spoken to women who were not employed by Fayed, who say that they were approached and assaulted by him. One woman said she was working at a London flower shop in the early 1980s when she was spotted by one of Fayed's team. Then, aged 21, she says she was flown to the Paris Ritz for a purported job interview where Fayed sexually assaulted her. A former BBC makeup artist also said she was sexually assaulted by Fayed when she was working on an episode of The Clothes Show in 1989, in which the billionaire was interviewed at Villa Windsor, his home in Paris. Margo, whose name has been changed, was 19 when she responded to a job advertisement in The Lady magazine in 1985 for a position as a nanny and governess in Surrey. She submitted her application and a photo as requested. Having worked as a nanny before, she remembers finding it odd that she was asked at the end of her interview if I had a boyfriend, or if I'd ever had a boyfriend. Intrusiveness, lack of boundary recognition. I said no. The interviewer looked relieved about it, she told the BBC. Evidently, this individual is under instructions to try and find fresh meat, virginal meat, that has been procured for Fayed to fit with his grandiosity of being the one that would break them in. And No doubt pressure was brought to bear upon this interviewer, hence their relief when they found a virgin. It was not until she was offered the job that she was told the role was with Fayed and his family at their Barrow Green Court mansion in Oxford. Her mother encouraged her to try a 1-month trial. I remember being driven in a chauffeured limousine through the incredibly impressive entrance gates to Barrow Green Court and the long driveway up to a massive brick house, she says. Inside, Margo says she was shown to a small, dimly lit room which had a single bed, a desk and an internal telephone. She soon learned to fear the sound of it ringing and Fayed summoning her. Expecting to see the children, she would arrive to find him alone. This is when she says the repeated sexual assault started. The job just didn't exist. He didn't need a nanny. He didn't want a nanny, she told the BBC. Thus, he has, of course, created this for the purposes of just having her on tap as somebody that he could sexually assault. For 5 days, Margo says she only saw the children twice and was not allowed to interact with them. Instead, each time, she was requested by Fayed. She says she was sexually assaulted by him in different locations on the estate, including the indoor pool, gardens and study. She felt trapped. Once you get in the house, you can't get out. You have to go down a long driveway and through big gates at the bottom. He's got to give permission for the gates to open, assertion of control. In the early hours one morning, she says Fayed came into her room, got into her bed, pressed her against the wall and raped her vaginally and anally, assertion of control, lack of emotional empathy, absence of boundary recognition. After he left her room, she immediately packed her case and told Fayed later that day that she wanted to leave and did not understand why she was there. But he refused, nullification of threat to control, and told her the job description would become much clearer with time. He told her to give it 24 hours, that he was going to buy her a house and give her more money, promised gain. She says she got very angry when she again told him she wanted to leave. I was kept at Barrow Green Court against my will as a prisoner for several days and still feel that I was very lucky to escape. She says eventually he let her leave, but as she went, a staff member told her to say nothing about my time here or my life would become very difficult. Threat through coterie member. Looking back, I believe I was recruited purely as a potential sex partner or plaything for Fayed, hence the questions at the interview to establish if I was a virgin. The events of that week have affected me ever since. I am not the same trusting person anymore, and I never will be. The BBC has also heard accounts from other women who say they were recruited as nannies, chefs and maids, who say they were abused at his private residences. They too say that when they arrived, the job seemed non-existent and believed they were hired under false pretenses. Telling of lie, similar behaviours, systemic approach with regard to the form of abuse. When the news broke about abuse allegations against Fayed, memories that Sheena had tried to forget for 47 years resurfaced. She has waived her right to anonymity to share her story. I was hearing dates, but it was before that. I was before that, she told the BBC. Sheena was 25 and working in a bank in Dubai when she first met Fayed, after relocating there for her husband's construction job. She says his visits as a customer became more regular, and he started to inquire about her personal life, lack of boundary recognition and career history, before offering a meeting about a potential job with him. As she sat on the other side of the desk to him in his office down the road, Sheena says he started to walk around and came up behind her. As I turned, the hands came over my shoulders. His hands were everywhere, she says, lack of boundary recognition. Sheena says Fayed sexually assaulted her and when she tried to leave, blocked the door, nullification of threat to control. She says she slapped him, challenge fuel, and finally managed to get past him, but that he told her, "You may come to regret that," threat. Sheena says Fayed then continually stalked her, assertion of control, turning up at her workplace, hoovering, the supermarket and a social club, repeating his parting words, use of threat. The threat was there all the time, she says. On one occasion he said, "I warned you you'd regret it. Have you noticed that I'm always there?" Sheena says this happened around 20 times, and on some occasions he would follow and grope her again. Assertion of control, lack of emotional empathy, lack of boundary recognition. I kept praying that somebody else would actually see this happen, thinking if somebody else sees it happen, it's real and somebody will do something, she says. She says he had an awful hold over her until he seemed to disappear. Later she found out he had left Dubai and she felt like she could breathe again. It was only in 2015, when her late ex-husband's health started to deteriorate, that she finally told him what happened. I told him because I knew he was getting towards the end of his life, and I felt he needed to know because it was the only secret that I'd ever kept from him. Sheena says what happened made her angry, and her biggest regret is not coming forward sooner before Fayed died. Further instances demonstrating the way that a prolific sexual predator and narcissist has behaved in relation to using a power imbalance against individuals identified as vulnerable, who he treats as mere objects, for the purpose, as always, of the pursuit of the prime aims. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.